Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Annandale whisky tasting this evening. Before we go on to the tasting, just a little heads up of what's coming up in the future. We've obviously got the tasting tonight and the live tasting next week at the Railway Club, and then we've got the Filey Bay tasting in October. In between, we have got the trip to Bladnoch on the 14th of September. There is now only 3 seats left for the Bladnoch tasting, so if you're thinking about coming along, don't leave it too late in case you miss the bus, basically, miss the seat. And there's also another tasting that's coming up on Friday, the 27th of September. This is a very, very special tasting. It's a sad tasting for us because, as you know, we do occasionally do the tastings at the Dracuir Arms, but unfortunately, due to economic climate, etc., we're going to have to shut the doors on the Dracuir Arms at the end of September. So we thought it would only be fitting to squeeze in a extra tasting and say goodbye to the Dracuir Arms and do something a bit special that we haven't done before. So we're at the point of picking 8 whiskies. Some of them are single casks, some of them are vintage ones. I think basically they're ranging between £100 a bottle to £330 a bottle. So it's an opportunity to try whiskies you would never think of trying or may have tried before. I can't think off my head what some of them may be, but I know there's a Glengoyne 21-year-old. There's the Octomore 14.3, which is super heavily peated at something ridiculous like 219 ppm to finish the evening off. So there'll be some absolutely cracking drams there, and it's just a goodbye to the Dracuir, and it'll be priced accordingly. So it'll be about £45 a head roughly, but the whiskies will reflect the cost of that. And then obviously we've got the festival, we've got barrel top tastings, which are becoming more and more popular. So we've just done a Lindor's Abbey one last weekend, which was pretty good. We've got Ninefold Rum, the local rum company. They're coming along. We've got the Moffat Distillery, Dark Sky. They're coming along in September as well. So yeah, we've got a few things coming up in between. And our centenary bottling of being incorporated, which was with Annandale. Unfortunately, when they took the cask out of bond to send us a sample, the cask was leaking. Oops. So they were good enough to send us 3 samples of sister casks that were bottled at the same time. So between Johnny, Callum, Karen and I, we tasted the 3 samples, and without knowing what the other people had picked, we unanimously picked the same whiskey out of the 3 samples. So that hopefully will get bottled shortly, and then we'll let everybody know. But because it's the 100th anniversary of us being incorporated, there is only going to be 100 bottles. The last one that we did was 115 bottles to celebrate 115 years in trading, and that sold out pretty quickly. There's even less of this one. It'll be the same design, same tube, same label, but it'll be the peated one with limited edition of 100 bottles. So look out for that one. So if you haven't met Ben before, you're going to meet him tonight. He's been very supportive. Annandale Whisky and Ben have been very supportive over the years with various tastings that we've had. And we just thought it was fitting that we should do a exclusive tasting of 8 casks, which Ben will talk us through, 4 unpeated and 4 peated. So without any further ado, if we can bring Ben on. Good evening, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. How's things? All good?
Fine. We had a brief chat earlier on, and we never actually discussed the single cask issue that we had with the leaking cask. So we were just going on holiday at the time, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, when we got the email. But then, of course, he had an issue with the forklift, etc., that you couldn't actually get into any casks to get any samples. So that delayed the issue. But yeah, we just decided when the samples came on Thursday, Wednesday, we would just taste them there and then. So we left Johnny and Callum in the shop with their samples. Karen and I came home, and we tasted ours, and then we phoned the boys up and they said, right, we've made a decision. We've both agreed on this. And the boys said, well, we've both agreed on a whiskey as well. So what did you pick? And we said what cask it was, and they said, that's what we've picked as well. So, so that's good.
All good. I mean, when I was backstage and you were saying about the Catholic, and my heart just sunk. I was like, but then you twisted it around and you went, oh, but we managed to get things sorted. I'm like, oh,
yeah. Oh no, they were very good. I mean, I have to say, when our heart sunk, we went, oh no, because that's a risky take when you buy a cask, obviously. But I mean, the distillery's been very good to say, well, look, we'll take that cask back and we'll offer you a choice of 3 casks of the same year, bottled approximately at the same time. So the liquid level is what we would expect, or what you would expect to be for that age of whiskey. We don't know what the strength is of it, but you'll re-gauge it and find out when we bottle the 100 bottles. So yeah, that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, and I'll say this on behalf of Annandale and all of the cask team. You know, we work pretty hard all year round to make sure that the casks that we source are of genuine nick, and it's just one of those things. You know, you kind of cross your fingers and you hope, oh God, it's not going to be this one. Every time you pull a cask out, you know, where was that drip coming from? What's that stain on the floor? You know.
Yep.
But the good thing about us is that we're very adaptive that way. We're very loyal that way, you know, especially with someone like yourself, not just yourself, but anybody if it ever happens to anybody else. But TB Watson's is one of our biggest supporters and has been one of the biggest supporters, and I'm sure will continue to be one of our biggest supporters, both D&G and obviously throughout the UK. So, yeah.
No, we're looking forward to that. So, yeah, I thought it was just fitting because it was our 115th anniversary, 100th anniversary, and we had the 2 casks in Bond, and you were the local distillery, that we should keep it local to celebrate what we've done over the years. So,
and let's be honest, that cask has been there longer than I've been at Annandale. So that's that's true commitment to Annandale.
Right, I'll let you get on, Ben. And as I say, I'll pop on every now and again. So enjoy the evening.
All right, thank you, Brian, and hello to everybody. It does feel a little bit strange talking to just myself, but then again, that's what Friday nights are meant for, are they not? Especially when you've got a drama in your hand. So, as Brian was saying, I am the global brand ambassador for Annandale Distillery. That wasn't always the case for me. I've been at the company for 6 years. I've worked my way up from being a tour guide to being, the head of retail for the distillery, head of tour guiding, and then David Ashenhoe, the general manager, managed to pull some strings, noticed that I can talk quite a lot, as I said, either to anybody else or just myself. I tend to talk quite a lot about what I'm passionate about, and obviously that's single malt, single cask strength whiskey. So now I've managed to work my way up to global brand ambassador. So if anyone's been with us throughout the whole journey from 2014, or if you've picked us up quite recently, we're getting bigger, bolder, and better to the point where we're able to supply most major retailers within the UK, most major whiskey focused retailers within the UK, like TB Watson's, and obviously we support the small independent ones that they just want to take a punt on a case of 6 of our whiskies, 1 bottle of each. Let's go, and we're happy to give that support to them. But what I'll do is I'll kick off the evening by introducing the 2 brands that we've got. And then when you're having your first dram, you're just chilling, you're just relaxing. I'll talk more about the history of Annandale, should anybody not actually know what it's about. So the 2 brands that we have are the Man of Words, which is the unpeated, nice little fruity versions of our whiskey. If anyone is familiar with Man of Words, it's this lovely golden bottle and it's got a lovely golden quill in the middle of the bottle. That is a dedication to Robert Burns, the famous Scottish poet. So David and Teresa, the 2 owners, They're very big on burns. They're very big on historical accuracy, historical heritage of not just Annandale, but most historical sites throughout Scotland. So it would be a shame not to name a bottle or have a homage to Robert Burns being a former excise man in this area of the world. So that's one of the series that we're going to try tonight. The first four. The second half of the evening, which is the last four, is a series called The Man of Swords. So the Man of Sword is our peated smoky version of our whiskey, and the sword is a dedication to Robert the Bruce, the former King of Scots, and where we're situated in Annandale, we are based on his lands. So again, with a historical nod and a homage to a very famous figure, we unofficially name ourselves the distillery of both kings and poets, respectively. So it's quite a nice, good marketing tool there. So I think you'll all appreciate that. The casks that we're going to try tonight are fourfold. So what we'll try and do is we'll do the first four as unpeated, and then the last four we're going to mirror that image, and they'll both be the same cask types in the counterpart. So cask number one will be a fresh bourbon from 2017. So that cask is only roughly about 7 years old at this point. The second one we're going to try is the Oloroso Sherry. Let me just check. Yeah, Oloroso Sherry from also 2017, another 7-year-old. The third one is going to be a Woodford Reserve Double Oak, which I'll explain a little bit about that as we go through it. And the final one will be a Fino Sherry Butt, so also from Spain. So it's essentially a bourbon and sherry tasting, but there's obviously some unique differences between the two, which is quite nice. Now, for all of you who don't know who Annandale or what we do is we obviously make single malts, which is fantastic. We are very proud of that fact. But not only that, we make single cask and we make cask strength whiskey. Now, as a distillery, that's kind of unique in a way that we usually get one or the other, but very rarely do you get all of them, both of them together. Those two things, single cask and cask strength. But that is all we do. We have never done a vatted malt. We've never done just a single malt. We do make a blend, but it's made with a high quality Annandale percentage. So yeah, we're very big on being self-sustainable, doing it ourselves, and taking you all along the journey. Okay. So the first one we're going to try is the Man of Words Fresh Bourbon from 2017. Cask strength, I believe the ABV on this one should be about 60.4%, but Brian will be able to correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't actually have the bottle in front of me. I'm currently trying a distillery that is...
it's actually 58.5.
Oh, so 58.5. So I do apologise, folks.
we should have sent you a list, Ben, actually. So if you don't have the strengths there for the casks, I've got the strength, so I can do the strengths for you.
Good stuff, happy days. Thank you for that, Brian. Not because I don't believe in the whiskey, but I'm abstaining from drinking Annandale tonight because, well, the sales department didn't grace me with a bottle, so I'm having to dip into my own, which is a distiller that was named after me, and it's Ben Nevis Distillery. So yeah, lucky for me. So 58.5, 7-year-old. I'll give you the taste notes as and when we go through. So fresh bourbon, what we tend to find with any fresh bourbon cask sourced from Woodford Reserve is that we get very heavy whipping cream, we get very heavy vanilla. We tend to get that sort of fruity sort of pineapple-y sort of notes that come from that cask because it is quite a warm climate. But we do get a lot of caramelization. The best thing about Annandale, and it's kind of our uniqueness in a way, is all of our spirit, regardless of it's peated or non-peated, is that it's very light and fruity. So we tend to get very, very green notes, like fresh cooked apples or apple cider, something like that. Or, we get a little bit of fresh grass and pine resin. These kind of notes do tend to come through, especially with this dram. This is probably the only dram, I would say, that you're going to get real raw distillery characteristic, as opposed to just cask influence. And we're quite proud of it. This, in essence, would be our bread and butter. It would be the one thing that if you were going to pick up a dram and say, what's Annandale all about? I've never tried it before. Can't go wrong with a fresh bourbon. I'm a big believer in, if you're going to do the basics well. So whilst you're all tasting this whiskey, that's 7 years old, I'll just give you a brief understanding of the history of Annandale. So where we've come from, where we're going, where we are, and where we're currently going. So the distillery was founded back in 1836 by a man called George Donald and the George Donald family, man and wife couple, independently owned, originated from a conglomerate of about 10 to 11 plus George conglomerate. Over the years, those sort of investment partners either lost interest, dwindled away, or passed on. So it became the sole ownership of the George Donald family. Now, to help them along their journey, they didn't necessarily hire too many people, mainly because they had 12 children, which in in the nicest way possible is a little bit of free labor. You know, you've got to earn that dinner that's going to be put on the table. So there's a lot of self-help. You know, this family built themselves up, and they just progressed to make single malt peated whiskey only, which isn't unorthodox. We might think about it as unorthodox in the lowlands in nowadays, but you just lived off the land. Whatever fuel source was available to you, whatever barley source was available to you, whatever water source was available to you, and so on and so forth. That's what they really worked with. So at the distillery, if anyone's ever been, about 1.5 miles away, we have a peat bog at Creaker, where we used to source all our peat for the whiskey, and they were making very small batches. We're talking about making a couple of thousand liters a year, and we're going to export them to really, really sort of faraway places like Dumfries, Ecclefechan, possibly even Moffat. You never know. The sky's the limit when it comes to whiskey. So they ran the distillery for around 50 or so years, just as a family business. Unfortunately, things do go on where George isn't feeling too good, and Margaret, his wife, isn't feeling too good, and they're eyeing up some sort of retirement, and they're eyeing up, some sort of handing it over, passing of the torch to their children. Well, unfortunately, some of them, like life, they move away, they become disinterested, they don't really want to take up the business, and the mortality rate wasn't great either. So they really had no one to pass the business on to. So they decided to sell the business to a man called John Sykes Gardner. John Sykes Gardner, like myself, is from England, fortunately. But the most unfortunate thing for him is that, he comes from Liverpool. So, no, I'm only joking. I come from Birmingham, so you can't get any worse than that, can you? John Sykes Gardner bought the business. Now, he was an excise man, so not too dissimilar to what George Donald did before he became a distiller. He was an excise man and a wine and spirits merchant from Liverpool. So the odds are that he knew how to move the spirit around. He knew how to interact with the brands and make contacts with all the local suppliers, supply chains and such. But he never really understood how to make whiskey. And to be fair, if you've got a distillery that's already distilling, you don't really need to have that massive grasp on how it's made. You just need to know how to sell it, which he was very good at doing. And at this point, this was about the 1880s, so 1883, John Sykes Gardner had bought the distillery. Now, he knew how to improve the business. So what he decided to do was invest a little bit of money, a little bit of time into the distillery, mainly because he wanted to pass it off to his 2 children. So an inheritance gift, as we can imagine. A very, very lovely gift to give oneself. And it was a retirement gift for himself, so really lovely gift. So what he decided to do at the heart of the industrial era was to rip out the water wheel and introduce steam engine power, which meant that we were able to produce more peated whiskey on a much more grander scale, brings the price down, brings the brand up. We can export it even further to Carlisle and Glasgow and Edinburgh and all these big, massive players that we were unable to reach in the past. Ran the distillery for about 10 years, from 1883 to about 1893, failing a little bit of ill health, and there is a little bit of a story behind why he wasn't able to pass the business on. And it's mainly because his firstborn died or passed away in a sort of tragic, sudden accident, and his secondborn was sent to Australia. So we don't really know much about that, but we don't really talk about that. What we do know is that he sold the business off to a man called Johnny Walker. Some of you might know Johnny Walker from Radio 4 DJ, which is quite nice. So he bought the business for about £2,000, which is equivalent to about £600,000 in today's money. So it's a very big investment from Johnny Walker, and he predominantly brought us on board because he wanted to produce peated whiskey on the mainland. So rather than having to buy an Isla distillery or Campbelltown distillery or anything like that, he could simply produce it at Annandale, put it on a train to Kilmarnock, that then becomes blended. It then goes on to ports at Stranraer, at Hull, at Newcastle and Dumfries and such places like this, and then eventually exports it all around the world. And he'd been doing that for about 30 years, which is all well and good. And if that was the end of the story, I think I'd be talking to you from a Diageo point of view, which isn't, which is what it would have been. A nice, happy story. But that's not the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, So what happened was American Prohibition and the First World War kicked in around the early 20th century, and we just closed down in 1924. And that was it. We basically, Johnny Walker had taken anything that wasn't nailed down, took the remainder of our whiskey away, and we became a dead distillery. And when I say dead, I don't really mean derelict. I don't mean mothballed. I don't mean there's a couple of casks hidden away somewhere because, save it for a rainy day. Everything was taken. And the reason being is because the First World War really does have an impact. Because what we realize is that when you lose skilled labor, and I'm talking proper skilled labor, generational skills, that have been passed down from father to son, to brother to cousin, to husband to wife, and so on and so forth. You really can't replace that. So given that, Johnny Walker decided to shut our doors. And we lay dormant for about 90 years or so until our new owners, Professor David Thompson and his wife and business partner, Teresa Church, they purchased the distillery in 2007 for about £1.5 million approximately. And they didn't know how to run a distillery. It was purely to save the building from being sort of demolished and turned into housing. And they sort of nudged each other and went, well, what should we do with it? Do we just keep it? Do we make it into a museum? What sort of options are on the table for us? And they sort of agreed that we should bring it back to life. And they spent around about 7 years and about £16.5 million later investing, refurbishing, rebuilding the brand, not just in their image, but sort of paying homage to how it probably would have been done back in the day. And here we are. So we've been going since 2014. We are coming up to our 10th anniversary. I joined the distillery in August 2018, and it's been downhill ever since, really. So that's basically the history of Annandale. And I hope I've done justice to anybody who hasn't visited the distillery. That's kind of like a brief overview. I would like to flesh it all out, but I just do encourage anyone who hasn't visited to come and visit us, which is quite nice. So the first dram is honestly... it was actually the first single cask strength that I'd ever tried 6 years ago, and it's come leaps and bounds since then. I tried it when it was 3.5 years old, just doing the first tour, along with the new make spirit that we still produce and still sell. And it's just got that really, really unctuous viscosity. What we can say about Annandale is, albeit it's very light, it's also very thick. So I'm going to compare us to a sort of instant sort of waxy oiliness in that sort of context, where we get a really lovely palate sort of covering, where we don't just say, oh, it's a quick flash in the pan and it's away you go. There's some vanilla, there's some lemon, there's some green apples. It really, really stays with you, and we're very, very proud of it. And as I said, it's part of our core range. So Brian, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, I was just saying to Karen, what a great start to a tasting. I mean, fresh bourbon. I've always been, as I think everybody knows, I've always been more akin to a sherry cask whiskey, but over the years have to try in certain bourbon casks. I'm certainly going from a sherry cask almost halfway to bourbon now, whereas before I would go, well, bourbon's bourbon cask, whatever. But yeah, it's a great start. And I haven't actually put any water in mine yet. I'm still sitting away at it. I don't know. Maybe I should, to see if it makes any difference or not. But at the minute, I'm just sipping away at it. It's lovely.
Yeah, and you'll know this as well as me, Brian, is that when we talk to people about whiskey, just in general, whether it's new whiskey drinkers, old whiskey drinkers, or experienced whiskey drinkers, the ability to put water in that suits your needs cannot be understated. We had it in our mind that we would always want to do cask strength or single cask. We always wanted to do single cask, but we have the benefit of cask strength of we bottle it at the strength that is natural. All we're looking for is just the quality aspect. Can it stand on its own at cask strength? Great. Let's add some water to it. Does it add any depth? Does it take away? Does it go flat? Does what's the sort of level that we're talking at where someone would need to go, oh, I've killed it. We've all had drams where we've gone, oh, I need a bit of water in it, and you've ended up putting 3 drops instead of 2, and it's just gone, it's just fizzled out. Doesn't mean it can't make a return, but it was essentially our way of saying it's our whiskey, but it's your way. So you can have 1 bottle, you can pour for 3 or 4 or 5 people if you're generous. I'm not. And add water to your own, but the liquid inside the bottle stays the same, and I think that's some of that is quite magical in a way.
Yeah, but I've added a small amount of water to it. It has opened it up slightly, softened it a little bit, but you still get the freshness of the bourbon cask there. But I don't know if it really needed a touch of water, to be honest. But I mean, you don't know until you've actually tasted it neat and then added the water to have a comparison to it.
It's kind of like cooking. I always compare it to like cooking in that regard. You can, before you add any ingredient, whether you add salt, pepper, spice, sugar, whatever it is, just give it a wee nip and just be like, you'll be able to tell straight away what's ready for you. But trying to on that scale, like it's a small meal for 1 or 2 or 3 people, it's fine. But you try and scale that up to 1,000 to 10,000 to 1,000,000 people across the whole world. You can't make that recipe by yourself. There's got to be some form of experimentation there to sort of suit everyone's needs. I'll never take it away from big whiskey groups where, it's such a daunting task. You've really got to be on the ball with that one, which is quite nice. And I genuinely think there's some care given to, when these brands do like non-cask strengths as well.
Well, that was a great start, Ben. Yep.
My pleasure. I just wanted to ask you quickly, because this is the cask similar to your 115. How does it hold up? Is ours better or is yours better?
No, very similar. I mean, we got great feedback when we did our 115th anniversary, and it was the Man of Words. Because what we found was people were buying a bottle to try, and then they were coming straight back going, well, if there's only 115 bottles, it's not going to be on the shelf long. I'm going to buy another one with the intention of I might keep it for later, or I might just continue drinking it. But a few people had said, well, I bought 2, 1 to drink, 1 to keep. And then when your next one comes out, which is the one that you're bottling shortly, I can then have 2 bottles of the whiskey. If I'm lucky enough to get one of the 100, I've got the 2 bottles side by side.
Happy days.
Yeah, no, it's good. But it's quite funny that when we tried the 3 samples, now you'd think because we've got 3 samples of the one that we're going to bottle, people would think, oh, they must taste the same because they're bottled the same time. And no, because each cask, as you know, is slightly different. So 2 of the samples, the first 2 samples we tried, they were very similar in taste profile, with the peatiness and sort of dryness, almost Dunnage Warehouse sort of earthiness to them. And then the third one was different, completely different. And what we did was we decided to taste them. The order we decided to taste them on was their cask number. So the lowest number got tasted first, the highest number got tasted last, because we had no idea of how we were going to taste them. So we said to the boys in the shop, well, if we do them by cask number, we'll do the same. And then we're both tasting the wines in exactly the same order.
Exactly.
The whiskies. And then the funny thing that of the four of us, we all agreed on the same whiskey, which is great. So 100% waving the flag for the one that we're going to bottle. But yeah.
And the way we do tastings, and I'm sure you're familiar because you've done hundreds, if not thousands, of tastings over the years, is what I like to do, and I'll encourage people at home to do this as well, is leave a little bit of each dram in your glass.
Yep.
I don't know if you can have 6, you don't have to, but if you want to do something really, really nice and cool, is because we have one side is peated, one side is unpeated. And what we're going to go from this point onwards is we're going to get heavier, more robust sort of flavors coming through. And sometimes it is nice just to revisit the light and mellowness of a bourbon cask. And I know sometimes that in the market we can say, bourbon, it's been done, bit boring, bit plain, or like it's very predictable. Should we say it's not boring? It's probably predictable. Is probably the word I'm looking for. Just leave a little bit in your glass, and I guarantee after about 3 or 4 drams, it'll surprise you, and you'll sort of appreciate the melons because it can get
Yeah,
quite.
I actually meant to say that, Ben, as well. If everybody could keep just a little bit of their next whiskey, and at the end of the evening when we're finished, you could actually compare whiskey 1 with whiskey 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Peated and unpeated, and then do the same whiskey 2 against 6. The same sort of style of cask, but obviously peated against unpeated. Whether our dram busters have the patience to actually hold back to do that, then we'll find out. Here's a test, everybody. Can you hold back some and do your own little tasting later on?
What I imagine they'll do is
the old dram busters tradition are let's just taste it.
What they'll do is they'll experience one that they'll go, that's really good in the glass. Keep a little bit to the side, and then they'll catch me at Dram Busters and go, give me that. I need that. I've got a little bit left at home, but I need to reaffirm. Just
just to check.
Yeah.
Right. Looking forward to number 2. So this Karen's going to put it up on the screen. So this one comes in at 61.1%.
Yeah. As good as I am, I tried to memorize all of the cast numbers, and by memorizing the cast numbers, I know what the ABVs are. So if I hear it's like 1026, which I see it is now, I know the ABV. So, like our counterpart with the bourbon cask, we tend to talk a little bit more about production in this sort of side of things because it is important. As Brian was saying, every single cask is in itself unique. And it might seem a little bit cliche to say that, but trust me, I genuinely believe it's true. I usually use this sort of analogy where it's kind of like, okay, you've got 10 casks, and I would be happy if sort of like a 10% ratio, a failure ratio. And a failure ratio would be something that it's not really going the way you want. The flavor's just not there. It may need a little bit longer, but it's not matching up to the other 9. Okay, fair enough. So we just disregard that 1. We've got 9 perfectly good casks that are going in the same direction, same quality. You then scale that up to 15 to 20 to 50 to 100. All of a sudden, that 10% ratio is quite big. 10 casks out of 100. That's 200 or 250 or 500 litres of alcohol that is, might not ever see the light of day. So it does come into play that the more attentive to detail that we can be and the more honest we can be with, okay, every cask is different. We've had it where casks have been filled next to each other, genuinely. Not necessarily the same part of the warehouse, or if they have been the same part of the warehouse, there may have been some slight difference in temperature, possibly, or one was just looked after, rubbed more and moved more than the other one. You never know. It does have a massive impact. So what we have decided to do is, you'll notice how some of these are from 2017 onwards, which is quite nice. We do have older products. For us, 6 years is an unofficial tasting landmark, quality landmark, I would say, because we found that we weren't very confident at okay, we've got 3 years old, we've got 4 years old, we've got 5 years old, we've got 6 years old, we're now going on to 7 years old and stuff like that. But we realized that 6 years is kind of like, yeah, we'd be pretty happy bottling this really, really interesting cask at 6 years old, but we won't really bottle it. We don't tend to bottle it anything younger than that anymore, which is quite nice. So 6 years is like an unofficial landmark for us. So when things do become 6 years old, we believe it should, in theory, be ready for bottling. But I'll let you make your mind up about that. Anyway, talk about production. So the recipe hasn't really changed since we started. So we still get our barley from the same place. It's Scottish Laureate barley from a place called Port Gordon in the Chris Malt Group. So up in Elgin sort of way. We bring down 30 tons of barley each and every week, every 2 weeks, sorry. So it's 60 tons, a month. We're producing about 2.5 tons of grist every single day. Put it through a mash tun, 3 waters, 64, 86, and 96. Just to really make sure that we're very consistent. Hasn't really changed, and we still find that the yields are fairly the same. We haven't really. They fluctuate, but they don't really change that much. So we're quite consistent on that. We ferment it from 66 hours up to 96 because for a long time we believe that, the longer we leave it in the washback, the more fruitier it will get, especially with the type of yeast that we use with man of words tends to be fermented, so it's a dry yeast. So we tend to find a lot of fruity flavors coming through that. And again, they are traditional washbacks, so the Douglas fir wood. So no stainless steel at Annandale, mainly because if you're a brewery, the cask is where you're going to get all your flavour. Same with maturation. So why would we want to change that? And again, a homage to the days of old, how they used to do it. Very traditional. Distilled twice through 3 stills. So it means that we go for a wash still, two twin spirit stills, and we roughly get about, I'd say roughly about 3,400, 3,800 litres per day out of that initial 12,000 litres, which is quite nice. Goes in at the cask at 63.5%. So he's standardised, we're not doing anything different to anybody else, and yet all these little slight changes will come through at the final product, which is quite nice. We tended to not buy too many Oloroso sherry casks in the very beginning, mainly because we knew the risks of buying sherry casks, and if you're going to bottle it a little bit earlier than most other places, you tend to find that sulfur does kick in quite a bit, and you've wasted about 500 litres per cask. So we were quite hesitant on sherry to start with, but as we started to get more confident, we started to pick up our sherry portfolio, our wine portfolio, our rum portfolio, our Madeira portfolio, and so on and so forth. So we're getting more experimental, and we're quite confident, hence why we get 6 years sort of confidence when we're tasting this. Anyway, not the point. As I said, I can talk and talk and talk and talk. So the Oloroso sherry, sourced from south of Spain in Jerez by Miguel Martin, we tended to find that it's a huge sherry grenade. We do get those authentic Oloroso sherry casks. Rather than just sherry seasoned, we find that it's Oloroso sherry. Mainly because it's a lot more deeper, it's richer, it's a bit more earthier, a bit more mineralistic. We tend to find that I don't want to say things like Christmas cake, because I'll be honest, I've never had Christmas cake, so I don't know what Christmas cake tastes like. And no one's going to convince me otherwise. So I tend to find it's quite raisinetty, but also you still get the little tiny hints of green coming through, just poking through, a little bit of pear, a little bit of orchard fruits, maybe a little bit of softness on that. It's not too spicy. We do find that European oak is a little bit more spicier than most other oaks. So it's a nice cinnamon sponge, Victoria sponge, cakey kind of feel to it. I love this mainly because, well, as Brian already knows, he loves sherry, and he'll obviously back that point to the hilt.
Absolutely, it's a different beast altogether. I think there's a few comments saying that. And if people have to say whiskey is whiskey, they all taste the same. Well, all they have to do is try these two whiskies side by side just to prove, one, they do not taste the same, and two, the colour is totally different. So whiskey is not whiskey, is not whiskey, is not whiskey. Totally different. And this just proves the case. I mean, this is just lingering. Absolutely just mouthfeel. It's great. Yeah. And it's not too sweet.
I love what Andy's saying in the last comment, getting a little bit of sulfur, which is quite true. I mean, you're always going to run the risk with sulfur. I actually tend to love sulfur. And if you ask David Thompson, the owner, he 100% hates sulfur. Famously, he said to me, we was doing a whiskey tasting and he leant in and he was like, can't stand sulfur. I really can't stand sulfur. So whenever we do a sherry, red wine, something that's a bit more European style, he has like a hesitancy in it, and you can tell. And he doesn't understand why he doesn't. Like, he just goes, no, I just have. He's really sensitive to it, and it overpowers him. And it's the same with me. I don't like wood flavors. I don't, apart from maybe the odd soft cedar. But I tend to find that I don't really like overly sharp. I don't really like really sort of like really oakiness coming through. But just because I find it, and I think David Thompson would agree with me, sometimes it can overpower some things. But with the Oloroso sherry, we hope, and I know for a fact that the flavour and the richness comes through it. I mean, compared to the bourbon, which is quite light and delicate.
Yep.
So it's like almost like the opposite ends of the spectrum. So as Andy was saying, if you do tend to go back to the bourbon, you'll appreciate the mellowness as opposed to the sherry, which is quite nice.
Yep.
I've run out of mine, so hold on. I'll just
I'll
graciously. There we go. I won't point out who the bottler is, even though it's Ben knows.
Well, it's got a lovely, to me, a lovely lingering aftertaste and side of the mouth, the back of the tongue. You know, good sipping whiskey.
And I know your audience are quite well experienced, so they don't need me to tell them how to drink whiskey because everyone will have their own sort of different palate. I was famously in a shop which I won't mention, not yours, Brian, don't worry. And there was someone had said, "Can I try this?" And they went, "Yeah, of course." Someone next to me leapt into our lives because I went, "Oh, can I try that?" And I was like, "You must do this. You must swill it around your mouth, and you must chew it for at least 10 seconds." And I'm going, I don't have the patience. I really no. I know how I would like to drink it. Swill it around a little bit, yeah. Breathe it in, exhale, inhale, and just let it do its thing. Sometimes I find that if you're having to go to that length, it hurts because it's alcohol in your mouth.
Especially cask strength.
Exactly at cask strength. It's like Jesus Christ. I mean, I love it, but I'm gonna need a nap afterwards if I keep it in my mouth for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So I don't recommend keep Annandale's whiskey in their mouth for at least 10 seconds. 3 or 4 should suffice, and you should get enough flavour, enough mouthfeel to sort you through. And if you're really that bothered about how it tastes, just have another mouthful.
And again, a touch of water just softens it.
I suppose I should point out that, because I've been at Annandale for a long time, and over the years I've heard really, really lovely comments about Annandale and all of our whiskey. And when I do tastings, I suppose I put myself in a position of, okay, expect only compliments. And you do get the odd one that is like, but that's fine. Like me as a whiskey drinker, I understand that not everything's perfect. And I wouldn't want anything to be perfect. If everything was perfect, then you can't appreciate, you can't have the perfect appreciation without the negative.
Yep.
So I take it as it comes, which is quite nice. And my job, especially here today, and when I go forward from this point onwards, is it's not to get me. I'm not here to get you to like all of our whiskies. I'm here to introduce the brand, get you to really love at least one of them. And if you understand why, my job's done. If you need me to explain why you might love this, then we can have a discussion. I'm very, very open that way. So shall we go on to the third one?
Yes, yep, absolutely. Very interested about this one, the double oak.
This is a very, as you said, very interesting concept.
Yeah.
And I will explain it as best I can and hope that I'm right when I'm saying it. Because I hope I'm right when I'm saying it. Because I've done a lot of research on it, but you can never be too sure. Wikipedia is only as good as Wikipedia is. And no, I'm joking. So, dram number 3 is obviously from Man of Words, of course. It was aged in a double oak cask, Woodford Reserve. Now, we're probably all familiar of what Woodford Reserve and who they are and what they do. So, what Woodford Reserve do is they're an American bourbon company. They make bourbon, they put it into bourbon casks, new fresh casks. Happy days. But what they decided to do with the double oak series is they decided to use 2 casks. Now, that seems a bit strange and a bit pointless because when you're making bourbon, you can only use a cask once, So it would be pointless finishing a cask in another bourbon cask. But there's a slight twist to the tale. So what we tend to find with the double oak is, in Woodford Reserve's terms, is one is lightly toasted, and the second one is heavily charred. So there's a distinct difference there, and I'm sure real bourbon drinkers will be able to pick up the very subtle differences between them. But what we wanted to do in the early days is you can only really get what you're given as a distillery. Obviously we want bourbon casks, obviously we want sherry casks, but who's going to sell them to you? Well, it is one of those things. So what tended to happen was we bought loads of Woodford Reserve casks in wheated, rye, corn, first fill, second fill, and in this case, double oak. And it so happens that one of them was in the wagon and fell off. So it damaged it a little bit. We didn't really want to run the risk of, bear in mind, we'd already filled loads at this point. We didn't really want to run the risk of filling it with spirit. So what you tend to find is that you fill it with water to test if it's leaking. We did at this point, it would just, there's no point filling it with water because it's a waste of water. So we decided to cut it up and and use it for planters. And what we found was that some of the staves in the cask, although they should be all charred, some of the staves in the cask, whether it be the second stave, then the third stave, and then the fifth stave, somewhere along the cask, they'd have grooves carved into them all the way the length of the stave. So what that does is it sort of creates a ladder effect where you've got char, virgin, char, virgin, char, virgin all the way down. Or what the hell does that do to the spirit? So what we found is that it's exposing the virgin oak inside the cask. So you'll find that it's a very, very active cask, and all the vanillins and the tannins that are inside the wood are bleeding into the spirit incredibly quickly, and it makes it incredibly potent. So when we talk about those, with the bourbon cask, you get vanilla, you get honey, caramel, and such notes. This is the true deal with that. You can't hide away from the fact that you just get massive butterscotch. You get massive sort of like vanilla, strong vanilla notes, almost like custard. It gets to the point where it's been like a single grain that's been aged 35 years. It's that buttery, and it's also quite thick at the same time. So in my opinion, not quoting anybody else here, it's as close to bourbon as we would like to get it and as we can get it without it being actually bourbon. David Thompson has gone on record and saying that he won't fill anything that's virgin cask because he believes it's too much like bourbon and you just don't get any of the distillery characteristics coming through. And he won't fill anything that's less than 200 litres because the wood contact is too great. The wood to spirit contact is too great. So although what we find with this one is because we get a lot of flavour in a short amount of time, we also sacrifice in longevity. So, you couldn't age this one for 10, 12, 15 years because the virgin oak will just overpower it, and it'll be like treacle and toffee, and you might as well be drinking a liqueur. Whereas being at 6 years old, we're able to retain our identity with this one. I really, really love this one. We were recently up at a hotel in Speyside, and we said, can we make a highball out of this? And it was just fantastic. It really, really was. At 59.5%, I had never tasted anything like this. And almost everybody I've given to, the only real complaint is that it's too sweet. So if you have a real sweet tooth, perhaps put this on your vanilla ice cream, and it may work wonders. I have recently compared it to having, coconut rum just dumped over vanilla ice cream and just letting it melt a little bit as it's a bit warmer, and just having it that way, it's fantastic. As you said, yeah, Andy, I agree with you. Bourbon on steroids, seriously, it really, really is. So, Brian, what do you think of this one?
No, I'm nodding with all the agreements. Yeah, I mean, I have got a sweet tooth. That's a fact. But that is love. I mean, there is that butterscotch sweetness coming through to it. Pleasantly surprised with it. Didn't know what to expect with the double oak scenario, what was going to be there. But yeah, that's a great combination.
I mean, there's an upwards, it's sort of like with anything new. You have like, okay, we're trying to portray the image as single malt, single cask rate. And then you've got the word double in there. It's very sort of, so it's 2 casks. No, It's 1. Huh. And I don't mind going into the whole process of what's happened to it. And in fact, I would like to go and visit Woodford Reserve and bring somebody from Woodford Reserve. And if I am mistaken, I would love to learn about it, which would be fantastic. I'm sure Annandale can pay for a flight out to the USA for me to find out. I'm sure, but we'll leave that for the next global brand ambassador.
Yeah, Mark's put a comment saying, "I really get the extra oakiness. Is that a word on this?" Yes, oakiness is a word. I think for those who have been in the industry for a while, or those that have tasted whiskey, oakiness, yes. I mean, it just, that's the flavour you get. It's from the oak, it's from the wood. Yeah.
The best thing about this is I don't know what we would classify it as because it's been used once by us. So is that now one fill maturation done? And when we rechar it and we go for it, does that then become a refill? Does it then become a half?
Second refill?
Yeah, exactly. What does that mean? Like, we don't know. the world's our roast. I'm waiting for the SWA to come down on us and say, call it this, you know. They're going through all their rule books and going, what do I don't know. But it breaks the norm of, you know, normally what you would have to do with these kind of casks, if it's not virgin, obviously, you sacrifice the longevity. So what brands do is they wait like 11, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years to get to this level of wood contact, because they understand that, you know, sorry, my cat is attacking me. What they understand is that, you know, you need the longevity. You want the age statement. It may be a bit of a shame that this might only last, you know, it might just have to suffice and be one of a young release that we do, but like a fan favourite type thing.
Yeah, a lot of distilleries finish off their whiskies in virgin oak.
Yeah,
just for 16, 18 months, just to give it that a different flavour profile at the end, for that big new hit of fresh wood, fresh oak. So, and
I'll throw a little bit of homage to one of my colleagues in the industry, Libby Barnby. As if anyone knows drinking whiskey, Glasgow 1770, the original. That is also finished in virgin oak, especially the cast strength one. And she gave me, we sampled the bottle, should we say, at the festival. It might have been yours, it might not have been. And I went, why do I love this so much? And she just went, look at the label, and it was virgin oak. And I went, right, yeah, that's why I love it so much. Sorry, my cat's just stood up.
So. That's all right.
Do you want to say hello to everyone?
Hello.
That's quite funny.
Hey.
Little devil he is. He's how many drums have you had?
Is he joining in?
Yeah, he's joining in. I'm not driving, so you know it's fine. So hopefully everyone has now been opened up to the world of, you know, bourbons are bourbons for a reason, and they're one of the most common casks for a reason. You know, it might seem a bit, as I said, predictable, but there's so many things you can do. You know, we're getting bourbon supplied from Woodford Reserve, Buffalo Trace, Maker's Mark, Heaven Hills, Jack Daniels, Wild Turkey, Pinhook, Early Times, and then you spread it across the 6 categories of wheated, corn, rye, first, second, and double oak. You will find that there are very huge differences. And then you've got all the micro differences as well. So whenever if anyone's ever new to whiskey joining us on this, which I hope they are, because, well, that's a very brave way of introducing yourself to whiskey, is 8 cast strength whiskies. I mean, trial by fire in a way.
Yeah, killer cure.
Yeah, exactly. And if you ever get the chance to talk to an ambassador, whether it be global or international, or just local, or anyone who works at the distillery, just always ask another question. You know, where did you source your bourbon barrels from? And if you did source them from there, fine. Is there a reason why you decided to do that? You know, no one's offended by any of these questions, which is quite nice. So shall we go on to the 4th one?
Yeah, we're interested in this one as well, being a different style of sherry, obviously.
Exactly. Now, I'll be honest, this is the only cask of Annandale's from Fino in the world.
Oh, right.
So it's not as if we've done like an older Fino. We've just bottled 2 at the same, or 4 at the same time, peated, unpeated, we've got one in reserve and waiting for this one to run out. There's currently no other bottled Fino in the world from Annandale Distillery. So everyone in this tasting is incredibly privileged. It's something that I've only ever had 2 drams of, and that's mainly because I couldn't get off the stand at a festival. So I had to just, you know, while I'm here, try my own supply, you know. But I tried it when it was maturing, and I tried a sister cask of it when that was maturing, and I actually tried this one as well when it was maturing. So that was like a wee, probably about less than 20 ml sample, something like that. But that's all you really need with this one. The difference between this sherry and the other sherry, well, the other sherry was 7 years old. This is only 5 years old. So this is the youngest, and the big one is the youngest cask that we have bottled at the moment, I would say, apart from our 2014s, but yeah, it's fine. So 5 years old, because of its delicate nature, and it is quite delicate. Usually we associate sherry with being quite heavy, punchy, sort of like, as I said, like a bit of like a grenade, like a sherry bomb gone off. you find that this is more closer to the bourbon than you realise. It's got the extreme grassiness coming through to it. It's a lot lighter. It's also a little bit drier as well. So if you do like a dry finish, this is probably the one for you. I recently gave this as a sample to someone. Who was it now? It was, I'm going to try and quote the name. It will come back to me. One of my good friends in the industry. And they'd never tried anything like it. You know, they tried things like the Kilhoman Phenos. They tried some from Glen Scotia, unpeated Pheno. Ours was just, it just has that little bit more depth, you know. It's that little bit of a hug that you want, you know. It's not just as I said, like a trying it and it's like, well, see you later, you know. Have another dram, and you'll be able to feel it again in a small. It really envelops you. You can really sink into this one. I've been gifted a bottle of it. Recently, I haven't opened it yet because, as I said, it's the only cask of the world of it. But I get plenty of samples anyway, so it's fine. But it's one that you can really just go, ooh, yeah, it is 8 o'clock on a Friday, you know, and you don't really want to put it down. I don't believe it was meant to be shared. So all the lucky people in this tasting, I really hope you enjoy this one. I don't even think Brian's tried this one. Brian, have you tried this one before?
No. Nope, this is a first for us. And I've just said to Karen, because Karen's favourite sherry is either Manzanilla or Fino. So Karen's at the drier aspect of sherries, whereas I'm at the other end of the scale, where it's Pedro Jimenez or an Oloroso, something that's got a bit more fruit to it, whereas Karen is the really dry, crisp style of sherries that you would have at the beginning of an evening with olives and things before you actually get onto your meal. But yeah, such a difference again compared to the previous one. But the thing I have to ask is, and I think Willie Welsh brought it up, that he was surprised that the Oloroso sherry cask was cheaper than the bourbon. So is that, I mean, again, the Fino cask is the most expensive one. So is that presumably because Fino casks are more expensive to buy?
I suppose it's there's some truth to it. There's a little bit of combination of both rarity and fan favourite in a way. So what we found was that in the early years, when we did 2015, our first full production, we really tried to get sherry. Probably paid a bit over the money to get the sherries that we wanted. And they just weren't ready. 500 litres, we bottled the first one at 4 years. Silver lining is that, the first bottling that we did, which was at £148, it just wasn't worth the price tag, In my personal opinion, it was a bit too young. But what we decided to do then was go hell for leather. When we reached 2017, which was the start of our experimental series, and I'm sure you've tried our STR red wine cask in the past, which was from 2017, we decided to just go, right, we know our spirit is good. Here's where we've fallen down. So by that virtue, by having a more expensive cask, but knowing that you get more bottles, but knowing you have more casks of the expensive ones, it sort of levels it out a little bit. So by virtue, we get more and more and more. And we were quite happy. Well, we found out we were quite happy with 6-year-olds. So we didn't have to wait 9, 10, 11, 12 years for our sherries to be really good. We could sort of take the chance of being 6. And the more casks we have, and that obviously that 10% ratio then kicks in, means that, we're actually swimming in Oloroso sherry bottles at this point. So,
good.
Yeah, that's the reason why we decided to do that. And to be fair, we found that we knew that bourbon was going to be predictable. So we wanted to make our new sherries more accessible to the general public.
Yep.
Do you want to try Annandale? You want to get to know what we're all about? Here's a bourbon. You want to go a bit more on the wild side? You've never had a sherry before, or you're prone to having a bourbon and then having a sherry whiskey after? Right, okay. So we can cater to both markets. That's kind of what it is. The Fino, obviously, does come with the fact that we're starting our Fino journey all over again, if that makes sense. So back to 2015, just doing a little tiny baby step first, see how it is, still try and make it as affordable as possible at 95 or so pounds. but we're going to try it first. We're going to absolutely give it 5 years, so just reaching the minimum of our 6 years. So yeah, and by having it younger at 5 years, we can actually produce more bottles, which in turn brings the price down. So yeah,
because the older it is, the less liquid in the cask, and the strength drops as well, 0.5% per year or whatever. So,
and I always, when I first started, they quoted us saying that we would lose 1% ABV per year and 2% volume per year. I can't really speak for the volume point because I don't really know the numbers in and out. But from the ABV's perspective, the sherry and all the others should be around about 57% at this stage. But they're staying towards the high 59s and the low 60s. So so there's something to be said there for our microclimate.
There was one cask that we purchased, and you were allowed then to get a duty paid sample every year after 3 years old. And I've still got the whiskey. We bottled it at 9 years old, so we've got 6 bottles. And each year, I got the sample. You can see the colour of the whiskey changing. From it was a sherry cask, but also significantly, you could see the alcohol level dropping. So when I'm doing a talk about whiskey, people are going, "Oh, didn't realise that." So the cask gives colour, but they can see that as a sherry cask, as the years go on, it gets darker and darker. But what they don't realise that from 63.5, it's then 63, then 62.5, then whatever. So when we came to bottle it, we'd lost about 3 or 4% in alcohol over those 9 years.
Yeah.
And that, then when people actually see the product in front and you tell the story, the jigsaw fits together. They realise the age, why whiskies are dearer, because there's less liquid in them. And then the alcohol's dropping. So it's getting that balance between age and alcohol strength.
And it's the curiosity things. But I mean, I love what you said about looking at the bottles and seeing the colour difference and the lines go down. And if anyone's ever been to Glengoyne Distillery, I recently went there.
That's exactly what I had in mind. Yeah, the thing on the wall. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was blown away by that. I was like, well, we love a good representation. We love graphs and we love charts and we love look at this sort of the sensory profiling of whiskey and all that sort of stuff. We're completely obsessed with the Scotch Malt Whisky Society and all that sort of thing. But I went on a tour with a friend of, not a friend of mine, but I did a tour, and there's the Spanish Oak, if anyone's looking for him on Instagram. He did a tour for us. Very funny guy. He kept throwing shade at us because we're lowlands, even though their warehouses are based in the lowlands. But we won't talk about that. But he was. It's a great visual representation, and I sort of said to him at the end, I went, "Oh, so you can see where you've drank all the way out of each bottle till it gets to day zero. That's quite interesting." But so maths isn't always a thing, and this just goes to show that you can have quotations of, okay, we're going to have 0.5% evaporation per year, and try and make predictions for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And ultimately, that's what you're trying to do. Never works that way. We might end up finding like an Oloroso in 5 years' time, that's 10 years, and it'd be absolutely awful. We just simply don't know. We may have filled 500 of those casks, but it's our job to make sure that before it gets to you lovely people behind the camera, it's our job to make sure that it tastes the best quality that it can be. So it's not all about quantity, it's all about quality. And I'll talk about quality over quantity. So to give you a bit of a figure, we roughly try to produce about 267,000 litres a year. We used to start at 250,000 as a nice round sum, or 245,000, just play it safe. But we since upped it then because we changed ever so slight things with our yields. We're able to just push that a little bit further. And we realised that by giving the production a Sunday off, how do they really need Sundays off? Can we sort of get them to nudge them to make another mash? Yeah, of course we can. So we pushed it to 267,000 litres, which ultimately, if you're doing single cask, doesn't really spread that far. So we looked at the big boys, your Glenfiddichs, your William Grants, your Edringtons. We're making millions and millions of litres a year. We can't compete on that scale, and we would never try to compete on that scale because we're a small distillery in Dumfries and Galloway. These are in the Highlands, they're in the Speyside region, very populated, lots of whiskey tourists every single year. So we're up against it even from day one. So how can we compete with these huge, fantastic brands? And it's a simply matter of quality, and that's where the sensory panel comes in. It never always to be this way, where we would have 5 people have cask samples and we sample them and it's all well and good. And it used to just be the distillery owner, our whiskey expert, James Rogerson, and, one of the office lads who would be in sometimes, and it's done us really, really well. But we really wanted to make sure that we're doing the best for you guys as well. So what we currently do is we do a sensory panel of 5 people who are not allowed to talk to each other until all the notes are written. We then converse, we then compare, we then go, okay, dram number 4 was the best one, let's bottle that one. Or let's earmark for the next bottling. And we archive, even though we're not selecting the other 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, we archive them. And then when we go to the next tasting, we're good to go.
Right. I took a sneaky photograph when I was at Glengoyne.
I should point out that is in the warehouse, and you're not meant to do that. But
this is a glass panel, so the one at the top is the new make spirit, and every year that's a 30-year lifespan in colour of the cask, but also the level of the cask is going from shoulder level to half, and that's European oak, and the other one was bourbon. So again, same idea. You'll see in the top corner it's new make spirit, and as the years go on, the whiskies get darker, but the levels fall as well. So that's when you see the two, as you said, Ben, is when you see the wall. Yeah, the story's there. It tells you instantly. You can understand it.
They're very careful about how much they sample each and every year.
It's
the same bottle. It's the same bottle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So normally, I believe, Brian, we would have a break around about this point for people to go away, have some water and oat cakes and stuff like that. It's the traditional thing, but we're going to go straight.
Yeah, we're just going to crack on. Yeah.
Good stuff, because my tastings are usually like that. I never give any breaks to anybody, which is quite nice. And I'm sure you guys are loving all of the lovely brubbiness that'll be coming out soon.
When we're talking about samples, just so that people know, when distilleries send us samples, particularly if it's a cask that we own, this is the size of bottle that we get. And then we obviously, there was 4 of us tried it, so that's the measures that came out of it. Whereas, as you say, Ben, when you go into a shop, you might say to the owner, I've left you a sample, and it might only be a 5 ml, or it might be a 10 ml. Whereas when it's a cask, I think it's more important that you're picking a single cask for yourselves to be bottled. So you're talking normally in the region of about 300 bottles, but because you've been good enough to allow us to do it for our anniversaries, which is quite a rare thing, to roll out a cask, take 100 bottles from the cask, put the bung in, then roll it back into bond. It's not the usual thing to do. But
no,
so thank you for that. Yep.
No. And if there's anyone from HMRC watching, I'm not talking to you specifically.
No,
it's quite a rare thing.
Allegedly, that would be.
Yeah, allegedly, yeah, definitely, yeah. It's not something that we would normally do. So for the wider audience, our intention is that when you buy a cask, we get you to come back and visit, and we really want you to be part of the journey with us, especially with your cask. And then you go to bottle it all at once. But with Brian, it was a special anniversary, and for such a special partner who's going to be there, with us on this journey for years and years to come, it's the least that we could do. So it's definitely a one-off. And who knows, maybe the oxygen in the cask will have a profound impact on the remaining spirit.
Well, that was the question that the distillery said. Well, do you realise that you're taking the risk now that you've opened the cask, you've taken the liquid out? We can't guarantee what that's going to be like in 2 or 3 years' time, because it's been opened before the bunk's been put back in. It's at your own risk. Yeah, well, we'll take the risk.
Yeah, take the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll do it for 150th anniversary. See what's
Yeah.
left. Oh, that's good.
And I'll get a bottle of that, I'm sure.
Yep, you can dig. You can dig me up and say, just let me have a wee sip. That'd be great. Thanks.
Oh dear.
Well, there's a question there, is there?
Yeah.
Can I ask how much of the whiskey making process is done in house, malting, bottling, etc.?
Right. So, Mark, this is one of the best questions I have received in a while. And I always ask, please, has anyone got any questions? And when nobody says anything, it's like, okay, we'll just move on to the whiskey. So, we have always wanted to do our own malting and our own kilning. Now, what the distillery has, it has the original maltings floor, so we can show historically where we used to do it. We have the old pagoda roof where we used to do all the kilning. Obviously, we don't do that anymore because there's only about 9 or 10 distilleries in Scotland that actually do both processes, if not just the one. So we don't currently do our own barley cultivating, harvesting, or growing, or anything like that. We don't do any of the kilning because, as I said, it's not a major thing that everyone does. However, we do our own what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? We do our own mashing. The point before that, we do the what do you call it? When we crush it up, I forgot what it's called now off the top of my head. Malting, kilning. I forget what it's called. But yeah, so we do our own mashing, we do our own fermentation, we do our own distillation, we do our own filling, we do our own maturation because we have an original Dunwich warehouse.
The milling process.
Milling, that's what I knew. I was going. Yeah. We do our own milling process. We do our own maturation, of course, and not only that, we used to send our bottles away to Houston's in Glasgow to do our bottling. But we found that supply chains aren't always reliable. You know, it's no fault of anybody. Brexit happened, COVID happened, and all these different things that you just can't prepare for. So we thought best that we build ourselves our own duty suspended warehouse, which we successfully did during COVID, in the latter stages of COVID when things were able to get up and running properly. And from then, we decided to bring back all of our whiskey casks from Bladnoch, from Whiskey Broker. So we wanted to keep it within the same micro climate, brought them all back to the site, and we do our own racking system. So all of our maturation is done on site. And in that new warehouse, we built ourselves a bespoke bottling hall. So we do our own bottling as well. Not only do we do our own bottling for 70 centilitres, we do our own bottling for 50 centilitres, 20 centilitres, 5 centilitres, and 15 mils. So we do really, really tiny individual bottling. We do our own labelling ourselves. So at the moment, we are, for specialised work, we do tend to go to Alba Printers, which is in Dumfries. So lovely shout out to the partners of there. So if we can't do it ourselves, we are happy to use local businesses to do it all ourselves. I'll give an example. We water down our peated Man Sword bourbon to 46% because we can't chill filter, and we supply St James's Smokehouse to ferment their salmon in our peated whiskey, and then we buy back the salmon. So it's a really sort of homogenized sort of system that we run at Annandale, and we've always wanted to be self-sufficient. So we've bought, the Globe at Dumfries, so we hire more people there. We've transformed that into a single cask bar, which is lovely, based on scientific profiling. We have engraved glass. We're happy to supply or be supplied with engraved glass. It's just really, really nice. It's a good sense of community, and we want to build a brand that everyone in Dumfries and Galloway can be proud of. We really want to. We don't want people just to drive by and head to Glasgow and head to Edinburgh or head to, Johnston Bridge Services. Take your time, stop off, enjoy what is there to be enjoyed, and explore.
I think when you built the distillery, it was all the local tradesmen from round about were being used as far as you possibly can. You were using people from all the surrounding area, the local tradesmen to build the distillery. You obviously they're putting money back into the community, basically.
Exactly. We were supplied with Thompson's food service, Pioneer food service. We have our local bread, which is from Francis Bakery, which is in the small town of Annan, just on the high street. So if anyone's looking for some decent bread, sausage rolls, cakes, scones, whatever it may be, that's what we use. All of our dairy, so we get all of our dairy locally as well. So I'm starting to sound a little bit like Clarkson's Farm at this point, but but yeah, to answer your question, Mark, a lot of it is done on site, and we will continue to do it on site. And not only are we going to do it for ourselves, but we look to do it for other people as well. So, we've recently launched a Spirit of D&G gift pack, which includes ninefold rum, which Brian mentioned earlier, Crafty Distillery, which are based out in Newton Stewart, as long as one of our single malts and one of our blends. So that's a lovely sort of homogenized sort of system where we can just represent why you should come to Dumfries and Galloway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, crack on with number 5 then. Let's get to the
Yeah,
peated
of course.
Yeah.
So at this point in the evening, I always say, so is anyone not a big fan of Pete? And a flurry of hands turn up, and I go, what did he ever do to you? It's not that funny. However, the Lowlands, as we know and love it today, have never really been known for peated whiskey. And as I mentioned, we used to make peated whiskey back in the day. So why would we not go back and do peated whiskey again? And we would not be doing ourselves a great disservice if we didn't experiment. We've got all these lovely, wonderful casks which are coming from every corner of the world, and some further afield, some close to home, some experimental, some tried and proven. Just because it works in unpeated and you cater towards the masses, which I understand a lot of distilleries can do and they choose to do, it might work better in peated. And what I really want to show you guys is two sides of the same coin. So with dram number 1, if you want to have a quick smell of it, if you've still got any left, have a quick smell of it and refresh yourselves with that. Have a little bit of a sip, just refresh your palate. The 5th one is also a Woodford Reserve bourbon cask. It's 200 litres, it's 7 years old, it's cask 1393 at 60%. So it's still cask strength, still single cask. Now, for those of you who don't like a peated dram, this is the one that I would always try and use to convert people to being peated drinkers, or be open to the idea of drinking peated whiskey. Where we get our barley from, obviously being from Elgin and Speyside, sort of a Highland Speyside region, there isn't a lot of sea salt spray where the barley is made and cultivated. So what we tend to find is that the peat that they're using is a lot more softer and sweeter, more subtle. We buy it down at 45 parts per million, and when we're obviously making our whiskey, we lose about 10% of that. So it comes down to about 39, at best 38 ppm. So relatively quite high in terms of phenol numbers. But where our water comes from, as well as the barley, is that we don't have any distinct iodine. We have no iodine in our water. We have no iodine in any of the barley or any of the vessels that we're using. So it stands to reason that this, for me, is more smoky than it is peated. And I genuinely believe there is a distinct difference between the two. If anyone's going to compare us to any other distillery, imagine what, I wouldn't say Bowmore, but imagine what a sweeter Highland Park might be reminiscent of, even almost to the point of, I'll probably say something like a Kilkerran in a way. If anyone's ever had a Kilkerran, it's quite soft, it's quite smoky, almost like a damp sort of fire that's going out in a way. So that sort of campfire wood sort of comes up. And it really reminds me of, I'm going to say this probably in the worst way, but we used to go camping in Coventry. And I won't say where for legal reasons, obviously. But when we used to do that, you wake up and the fire's just dying out, and it would just be that warmth, that sort of that little bit of heat that you want at the end of the day. So being at 60%, you really don't see it coming through. It's very soft, it's very delicate approach-wise, and you still get the apple, you still get a little bit of tropical fruit coming through. But what we try to do is we try to get it layered. So we try to have it at distillery characteristic, however short that may be. We try to get it cask influence, which will make up a massive chunk of the flavour. So you still get vanilla and cream in there, a little bit of the soft fudges, and then the finish would then make up maybe about 20 to 30%. So you do feel it in your chest as opposed to your throat. But if you're chewing it for 10 seconds, you'll be tasting it forever. The best thing about us, and I've always said this, is that even though everyone has that sort of misconception that once you've had peated, you can't go back to having unpeated, I genuinely believe with Annandale you can. So you can even experiment with yourselves. You can try this one, and then go back to having the Oloroso Sherry, dram number 2, and you'll still be able to tell the difference. You'll still be able to get full flavour from dram number 2, or even dram number 1, 3, or 4. Do you agree with that, Brian, or are you totally, no, I only like the first 4?
No. Because I think what I don't like with peated whiskey is the Islay style of the iodine TCP. It's just overpowering. The mainland peat has a more subtleness to it. And we've just compared this sample of the bourbon one to the sample that we picked for our 100th anniversary bottling. And our 100th anniversary bottling is 2016, so it's a year older. We don't know what the strength is. That's because obviously the strength wasn't put on the bottle. They're slightly different in style. Karen was comparing them. But 60% in old money, 60% is 105 proof. In hell's bloody bells.
It's so funny. I do a lot of brand promotional days up in very touristy areas of Edinburgh, and you'll always get the American contingent, the Canadian contingency coming over because they still speak in proof.
Yeah,
they don't deal with ABV, which is quite funny. So anytime I'm doing like a really funny number, like it's 61.2%, I have to go, hold on, let me do the conversion. Hold on, yeah, and then they go. They can't believe that what they're drinking is this,
It's over 100 proof, yeah.
And as I said, first impressions are very important. If it's 10 a.m. and you've just got into Edinburgh and you flew in from the United States the night before, probably the last, who knows, it might be work well, probably the last thing you want is a peated 60%, 120 yard, 110 proof single malt Scotch whiskey from a brand you've not really heard of. I kind of come across like as a snake oil salesman in a way. Oh, it will cure all your ails.
Yeah.
The worst thing is I look Scottish, but I don't sound it, and they're just even more distrustful.
It'd be called the travelling medicine man or something.
Exactly, yeah.
And little potions or ceramic jars and things. This will heal your athlete's foot, no problem.
So it's a very good question from Ross. Where's the peat source from? So, as I said, if you go up to Elgin, sort of way, and I've just come back from there. It's a really, really lovely part of the world. I'd never been to Speyside region. I'd always heard about how congested it was, and you do see like every 5 to 10 miles there's a distillery. But very rarely do they ever do like a lot of peat. They're not really known for their peat because they're based on the River Spey. But if you do get the Spey, you get I'm looking at a bottle of Mickle Tour over there, the Chinkapin one, the peated Spey one. Yeah. So you don't really associate peat with Speyside. So where we get it from is definitely sort of just on the edges of the Speyside region where it sort of curves upwards and to the start of the Highlands. And as I said, it's more inland than it is coastal. So they don't, even though that where they malt the barley is near the coast because it's quite advantageous to do that. It's actually sourced from inside the Highlands, so it's only about 30 to 60 miles inland, so it's not that far. But the problem that we find with that is like anything, it was a famous story that the Chris Malt Group, the one that we use, caught fire. The peated side of the factory caught fire and shut down operation for a long time. So we had to sort of put Man of Swords on hiatus for a little while. In the recent, probably must be about a year or so ago now. So maybe in a few years' time we'll see like there might be a dip in Man of Sword bottlings. Shouldn't really affect any of the pricing, but we've still got a lot of peated stock in the warehouse, so don't worry about that. It's absolutely fine. But everyone was scrambling because they were like, where can we get this peat? We need peated barley for, people in England were trying to go, well, we need peated barley. We can't get it from anywhere apart from, the furthest reaches of Scotland. So they started to diversify and buy like extra Freud casks, and they were doing a pretty decent job. Diversification is really, really big, and having yourself being able to adapt is what Annandale is really good at. Okay, we've got no access to peated barley. we can still get unpeated barley. So you know what? We're going to diversify with different cask types. So being able to adapt is really, really nice. And never being too rigid is quite key as well.
And Willie Wells has just put a comment up about how long do you think we'll be able to use the peat bogs in Scotland? Yeah,
well, that's a very good question.
It's going to run. It's going to run. Was there not something about they were going to stop doing the using the peat bogs? Obviously, there was a big outcry about that.
It's a massive thing. It was a small thing that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it is a real conversation that we should be having, just for longevity purposes. And in my personal opinion, I can't really speak for Annandale because we haven't crossed that bridge yet, but as long as we caretaker it, as long as we, they'll probably introduce something where you have to have a specific license for it, because I know that it's people's livelihoods. You can't just go, like, you can't do this anymore. And then the government are left paying people because they've taken away their livelihood. They're trying to subsidise something that doesn't exist anymore. So if we look after it, if we get special licenses, that might create a small monopoly where we have to buy peated barley from a certain people. There'll be some way of doing to make it sustainable. For us, we have access. Also, we have access to creek up the road, but we have had talks of being authentic and being true to self and going back to the old ways. Could we utilize our own barley? Could we cultivate our own barley? And not only could we cultivate, grow, and malt our own barley, could we get the same for the peats at Creaker, which is just up the road from us? Yeah, and it wouldn't take that much. And we could supply local people, so we would become another source of that. But with the climate the way it is, who knows? I can't tell for everybody what's going to happen, and I'm sure it's probably affecting people much worse than what we are. We're just a purchaser. We're just someone who wants to have it, as opposed to people who actually rely and need on it, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, there's more and more, as you know, there's more and more distilleries opening up. And the demand for casks is going to be high. The demand for peat's is going to be high now, because everybody's wanting to do, or most of them are wanting to do some style of peated whiskey in their portfolio for the next 10, 12 years or whatever that's upcoming. So there's going to be the higher demand for it as well.
Well, I had a Q&A session from Glenn Cairn today, and it was talking about what's it like being a brand ambassador and all this sort of stuff, and everyone's talking about sustainability. And the good thing about sustainability, as I mentioned, is it's the ability to be adaptive. Is we've taken a lot from the earth as we are, and it's time to give some things back. Just let things heal, and we're creatures of habit, but some things, who knows. We might find that cognac casks are the new favourite as opposed to sherry and bourbon. And that becomes because there's ample supply of it. You never know. We always, if we can't get something, we always go for Tesco's Finest or something like that, or specially selected from Aldi, and it works just the same. So who knows?
Yeah, no, but that's
so shall we go on to?
Yeah, that's a good start to introduce peated whiskey to the range.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
I was going to get quite emotional then. Because I love peated whiskey. Pete himself, he's all right, he sorts me out a couple of balls. So dram number 6, obviously flipping the coin, obviously. Man of Sword Oloroso Sherry. This is from 2017, and Brian will be able to correct me, but the ABV is 61.1%. Wait for it here to come up. 61.2. I'm so close. This bottle lays quite close to my heart in a way. Despite the fact that I've been at Annandale for 6 years, and now we're part of the Century panel, I wasn't there when these casks came in, but I was there when they turned 3 years old. So in 2020, when we were going through that really lovely period, as we'll remember 2020 was, French red wine was starting to come in because we'd obviously released it at 3 years old at 62.1%, but they got me to do tasting notes for that and also through this. Now there was 433 all the way up to about 445, something about 15 or so casks. No, about 15 or so casks. And they were like, right, Ben, go home. This is in 2020, 2021. Go home, sample them, write some notes up, come back to us. And James came up to me about a year or so ago, and he went, "So, you remember those tasting notes that you did for these bottles?" And I went, "I don't really remember it that much, but I can try and remember if you want top of my head." "Oh no, I've got them here." And it was like this A4 piece of paper which you put in a binder. And he just went, "Would you mind going back through about 3 or 4 of them, if that's okay? We've picked out the ones that you liked best and just try them again." Okay, yeah, that's quite exciting actually. People are actually listening to me, and they had improved vastly. And I was thinking, wow, how naive was I? I mean, don't get me wrong. If that's what I tasted at the time, that's what I tasted. And if I said, I usually just earmarked them as not really, I wouldn't bottle that to save my life, or wow, this is really good, you should bottle it now. So the ones that we picked were like mediocre to really good, I thought. Turns out the good ones were just sort of like the same. They hadn't really improved. So that meant that, they were probably ready to be bottled, whereas some are just vastly improved. And it really humbles you, like as you said, and I'll say it again, is that every cask is different. And you think the horse is leading the race, it might not be the one that finishes first. So we decided to bottle this at 7 years old, and it's just beautiful. It's got that lovely sort of barbecue. It's got a real ember char to it. It's almost like having like teriyaki beef, a little bit of spice in there, but not cinnamon this time. It's more of a garam masala type spice. But it's a little bit peppery that I quite like. So this one I've may or may not have had with a few just over rare steaks, a bit of medium rare steak, and it just goes really, really well. It's really thick, juicy, unctuous. And again, with the finish, you're in absolutely heaven with the finish because it just stays there. You're drinking peated whiskey. You don't want to have anything else. You just want peated whiskey. This is the one for you, I would say.
Yeah, actually, I was smelling it, and you were saying sort of barbecue, so I went, "Oh, that is like it's like a barbecue sauce sort of smell, quite enticing,
And
sort of
as
a
you
nice
know,
richness to it."
As you know, being in Dumfries and Galloway, we've not been treated to that many barbecues this year, have we?
No, absolutely not. No.
I mean, we have a distillery river we have a river that goes through the distillery, and at the best of times, you can just hear it trickling away in the background. It's lovely, romantic. I popped in just to get my laptop, and it was like the Three Gorges Dam had burst. It's like, oh my god, our warehouse is going to be swept away. It's going to be like TB Watson's cash just going down the river of Annan. Like, no,
I'm going to say that.
although it would still make its way to Dumfries, so who knows?
We'll catch it at the net. It's okay. We'll rein it in. Yeah, the weather's been abysmal, but anyway. No.
But for something that I never want to say anything cliche where it's like, oh, this is the end of the night dram, because it isn't. It's one that you would. If you're at the famous whiskey festival Drambusters, which I'm sure you've all heard of by now, and you're doing the second rounds, and I always say to people, "Do you want peated or unpeated?" "Oh, I'll come back for the pizza then. I'll come back for them. I'll do the rounds first."
Mm-hmm.
And they do come back to me and they go, "So what have you got to offer?" "I've got this Oloroso sherry here just for you." "All right, let's go pick up some bottles." It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's good. I take it, are they all the same ppm? About 40-45%, really?
They are.
You haven't done anything over the top for any particular cask style?
No, the only thing that we've ever really changed from when we started production-wise to what we do now is we've just shortened the fermentation period, but we haven't found that it's any less fruity. We haven't found that it's any less any less character than what you would normally have, and that's mainly because we just really wanted to produce on a Sunday, really. Because we realised that we were being a bit too gracious by having Sundays off. And I know some distilleries are 24-hour factories just churning out whiskey all the time. And because they're doing that, they can guarantee consistency. But as I said, famously, we're inconsistent. If there was anything drastically wrong with it or drastically different about it, in a good way or a bad way, we would have picked it up well before bottling. Of course we would have.
Yeah. I mean, how many litres do you produce in a year, roughly?
So, as I said, we produce about 267,000.
Right.
We do try to aim to do more than that. But for me, I've said to the owner, I said that really runs a risk of changing the the recipe in a way.
Mhm.
And we're doing fine as and when it is. You can't rush these things, you know. Rome wasn't built in a day. If they
No.
haven't heard of Annandale today, yesterday, 3 weeks from now, they hear about us eventually. They'll know
Yeah.
that we do peated, unpeated, lowland, single malt, single cask strength Scotch whiskey. So it just takes people like, well, giving this platform, people
Yeah.
like myself, people like my colleagues, just going out there, liquid to lips. Yeah.
Are you building any more warehousing?
Yes.
Yes.
These aren't
I'm
loaded
just
questions,
thinking.
guys. I didn't know these questions were coming along. He's just that good.
No, because I'm just thinking if you're obviously producing, you've got a hindsight of what you're going to be doing, and you're planning ahead of what. So you're needing the warehousing space, because I
Yeah.
think we're planning a trip to Bladnoch, and I don't think the actual distillery will be in production, because their warehousing capacity is full at the moment.
Mm.
There's no
I
way to
just
keep
come
the
back.
capacity.
I just come back from Bladnoch, and it's a fantastic
Yeah,
tour.
yeah.
And they were saying that not this time, but the time before the last waterfall release, they were building another warehouse, and I was like, oh, that's
Mhm.
very interesting because they understand that they need space, you know. And as we all know nowadays, space is a precious, precious thing, you know.
Oh, yeah.
In warehousing distilleries because we can't change the shape of the building. But to answer your question, yeah, we're in talks with like our last warehouse, we're in talks with the farmer.
Mhm.
Buy more land from him because he owns loads and loads of fields around us, and it would just make sense to keep everything in the same microclimate, to keep it in the same
Yep.
footpaths and the same roads, and
Yep.
and if we want to half build one, great. If we want to build, you know, if we want to build dunnage warehouses, if we want to build massive ones that are there for deep storage,
Mhm.
we can do all of that. But it was so funny, and Mark, who's our head of production, and I love Mark to bits, he was speaking to David Thompson, and he said, David, we should probably look at buying these fields. You know, they're going to cost X amount of money, but it'd be a good thing in the future, you know. Or we've got the option to lease it for about 50 years. And then David Thompson just went, to be fair, Mark, in 50 years, we won't be here. So let's just buy them. let's keep it under our control. We don't want to have to pass on anything like that to
Yeah.
the next generation of Annandale whiskey workers, you know.
Yep.
We're here for the long haul. We're not just here for a good time.
That's interesting.
So
Yeah.
dram number 7 now.
Yep. Back to
Again,
the double oak scenario.
I know. And this one has also an interesting backstory. Same cask, same maturation, haven't changed anything. So you all know what to expect at this point. Peated single malt Scotch whisky. Same casks, just from peated spirit. I have a recent anecdote with all of this. So we went to a hotel in Speyside, and as I mentioned, for the double oak manor words, they asked, maybe we could do a highball, you know, with this, and it worked really well. Now, I'm not really a particular fan of highballs because, well, you lose a lot of. I think the whiskey's kind of lost in translation in a way. It's there, you can taste it, but I would much prefer to have a whiskey. That's kind of my aspect of a highball. And I know last time we did a format like this, we had the brand ambassador for Nick Days, and he was a fantastic fellow. And he was saying that Nick Days is produced predominantly to make highballs. So I took that in mind. And when we were at the hotel doing these cocktails, we had a bottle of double oak, which we actually donated to using their honey barbecue glaze for their chicken wings, which we all consumed by the bucket, which was fantastic. But I said to them, could you make me my favourite cocktail, which is an old fashioned? And they looked at me and just went, of course we can. And they could not have yanked the bottle out of my hand quick enough. And they made us a sample one. So they gave it to my colleague. He absolutely loved it. Lots of brown sugar, lots of orange, lots of ice, and obviously our whiskey, which is fantastic. A little bit of bitters in there. Really, really worked well. Handed it to my colleague. Same thing. Blown her away. Gave it to me. They never saw the rest of that. It was just that good. So when we talk about how good our quality of spirit is, and not just in a plain format, but also when you can mix it as well, it really, really adapts itself and it can do wonders for what you want it to be, which is very nice. I'm very proud of that fact, mainly because they said to us, can we keep the bottle and sell the cocktail at £10? per cocktail. And we went, yeah, of course you can. There's no point. There's no problem with that as long as you tell them where it came from and the provenance of it. We're absolutely fine. So for me, you do get that burnt toffee popcorn, sort of like almost as if it's, you've gone to the movie theater in a way, and you can smell the popcorn, which is very, very lovely. But then, you might have had like the last little bits of it at the bottom, where it's like the last bit where it just charred a little bit. Or some of you might notice a little bit of that home style popcorn. That's kind of what I'm referring to. Not only that, you do get the vanilla, you get the punch, but you get smoke almost coupled with a little bit of char. Now, as you all know, I don't really like wood and I don't like overly charred things, but I am a fan of salt, and I get a little bit of like salty bacon coming off. It's Sunday morning when you've had a few 2 drams the night before, and your partner wakes you up and goes, "Would you like a bacon sandwich?" Oh, I love a bacon sandwich, and just a little bit of salt and fat comes into it with this, and then maybe you might down it with a tub of custard, if that's your thing. But that's exactly what I get from this. So it's hangover in a glass, in a way. What do you think, Brian?
It's got a lovely sweetness to it. Lovely richness. I think that when you said about popcorn, Karen's just trying it at the moment. She went, "Oh yeah, I can get the sweetness and that sort of slightly smoky popcorn sort of smell and taste to it." But again, it's got the sweetness coming through, which I didn't expect from the double oak.
And I'll put it to the audience. And I know that sweet is really, really good, and life isn't all about one thing, and you've got to have equal balance. So what was quite interesting, as I was saying to Brian in the green room, in a way, is that I tried a Man of Words Chardonnay at 3 years old, and it wasn't going for bottle or anything. It was just, as I mentioned before, we do these sort of tastings, and it's the only one where I've gone, "Oh, it's Chardonnay. It's very interesting. I've never had a Chardonnay cask from anyone, single cask per se. I've never tried it, and it was bitter. It was very, very bitter, and you obviously get sweet, salty, umami. You get sour, spice, burnt, all these different sort of sensory profiles going. But I've never had bitter, and it was almost like biting into a mango. And I love mango. A little bit sour at the same time. So just because it just goes to show you that what we do is, we've got good casks. We need to find a great cask. So it's all about, and I keep saying, is that the spirit of the cask is very, very an individual thing. So just because it works for me doesn't always mean it'll work for you. And Brian probably knows as well, I don't tend to give tasting notes out so much. I usually present the whiskey, and then I'll give it about 30 seconds, and then I'll dive in with questions to people. So, yeah. Very, very interesting.
I think everybody's got their own sense of taste, but there's a lot of people that I've noticed over the year, many years of doing the tasting. People go, there's something here, and I know I just can't put my finger on it. It's there. It's at the tip of my tongue, and on the side of the screen it'll come up, hair drops. Everybody goes, "That's it, hair drops." You just need somebody there, or odd fellows, or some sweets like that, and they know what the memory says. Hey, I know that taste, but what the hell is it?
Yeah, no, I'm always a fan of anecdotes are better than tasting notes, because it's a very personal thing, as you just said. So when I said this dram reminds me of that trip to that hotel up in Speyside, it will always be with me. There'll obviously be other memories with it, where I'm sure I'll go to whiskey festivals, dram busters, and such places like that, where I'll go, "Wow, do you remember that guy who tried it? And he just loved it. He didn't know why, but he absolutely loved it." And we were trying our best to talk him through it and say, "This is probably why." And he was going, "Nah, that's not it. No, that's not it. I know I love it, but I don't know why." And it's, as I said, it's my job to get them to that point of understanding. That's why I love it. Yeah. And someone said seaside earlier, and it is true. It's that saltiness and it's and as I mentioned earlier, it's very, very oily. So it has a
Somebody's
lot
just
of
put a
retention.
somebody's just put a Parma violets there. That's what they're getting from it. So.
There's another drum. It's not on this tasting, but I don't know if you remember this, Brian. We had a 2016 Hogshead, Man of Words, Man of Swords, and one was American White Oak and one was European Oak. And we have one left at our bar, and we obviously keep some back for prosperity reasons. In fact, I've got it in my cupboard over there because I was the last person to buy the bottle, and I'm not opening it because I'll drink the one from our bar before I drink before I open that one. Keep it a bit rare. At least there's one less in the world. And it is true. We were getting like sherbet lemons, and we were getting pear drops, and a little bit of that sort of like old confectionery that we've not smelt since we were kids doing penny sweets. You know, it's like it's just confectionery sugar. Like it's mad.
Yeah. No, I think you've done a great thing there with the double oak. That's a
I agree.
That's a thumbs up. That's a thumbs up.
I was speaking to our warehouse manager, and I said, "Look, I know these things aren't meant to last. Just give it to me straight. You've already taken the French red wine away from me. Like, I know it's a distillery exclusive. And we don't have that many casks. How many of these double oaks have we got left? Oh, we've got hundreds." I was like, fantastic. There we go. I'm happy with that. I can keep selling them all across the world.
Yeah. Yep. That's a great thing.
Because one thing that we have is that we've not really, and I'll say this to all the audience as well as yourself, Brian, because you'll understand this as well, is that we are now international, which is great, but we can't give everybody everything. It's the joys and the shame, because if there's a really, really, really fun cask, and I go like the Phenos, for example, that's not available anywhere else in the world. It's just the UK at the moment. That's not to say that people from Europe or further afield haven't already ordered a bottle. They're likely going to be the only person in that country that has that bottle. Because we're very young, no one's heard of us, they have that advantage. But I'm the worst salesman in the world. I just want to give everything to everybody and just try this, try that, try this, you know. Come into the warehouse and experience it with me. And we don't even know what the ABV is. No. Just it's fun.
Yeah, that's when we got the samples for our cask that were going to bottle. We got the cask number, but there's no ABVs on it. You know, you've got a rough idea of what it will be at that age. Yeah, it's just be under 60%, 58, whatever. It might not be. Could be lower, could be higher. But the thing is, you're just tasting it on its taste profile, not its ABV.
Yeah, exactly. So, shall we move on to the final drum of the evening?
Yeah. So we're just over the. Again,
this is always a sad point in the evening when you get the last drum.
61%. 61%.
It's like you're calling last orders and you're ringing the bell. Again, another special cask is only one of its existence at the moment. Let's not say it's not the only one that'll ever be. Phenos Sherry, but Man of Sword. Now, because sorry, excuse me. I got hiccups. No, just because what you'll notice in the cast numbers, you've got 2018 342, and the other one isn't too far away. So we did fill around about 10 casks of each. So they'll be in the low 300s, which means that they were matured probably or filled roughly about March, April time, give or take. You know, we can probably do about 98 casks a week, give or take. So what's that about? Yeah, about 400. Yeah, almost about 800. Yeah, about 800 casks a month, give or take. I'm sure my math is right on that one. So we don't have a lot of them, which is a bit of a shame. But I am going to be a bit pessimistic on this one. And I actually prefer the full Oloroso Sherry compared to this one. The only reason being, and it's the only reason, is that it's got a little bit of woodiness to it. It's got a little bit of that very, very, very strong black cracked pepper. Still lovely, still unctuous, still juicy, still fruity, still rich. Little bit earthy, which is quite nice. But I didn't tend to find the finish was as long compared to the Oloroso Sherry. It's still fantastic and a short little quick bursts. Great. But because it doesn't stand up to the consistency of quality for that I hold for the Oloroso Sherry, it's only my personal opinion that I prefer that one. Still a lovely dram, 61%. it doesn't have that. What can I say? I don't know. I'm kind of like Brian in this regards. I mean, I can go between them. Karen might love this, Callum might love this because it's a little bit drier than the other one. But I'm fully with Brian in the Man of Sword version, the Man of Sword version of the sherry, Battle of the Sherries, as we'll call it. What do you think, Brian?
I think of the two, I prefer the unpeated one. Nothing wrong with this one, but just my personal palate. Again, it's all personal. My personal one, I just think I get more of the flavour profile from the Fino sherry cask without it being peated.
I have another experience with this. We were doing a shop tasting, me and my colleague John, and we really, because we weren't driving, we really got to experience this, all of the range, because we were doing a shop tasting for ourselves, and we're quite close in terms of palates, and without it being interrupted by anybody else. I know we're all silent, but they all have this note and that note, and we all sort of kind of, okay, well, we'll agree to disagree on this one. So for ease of purpose, we'll go for this one for the majority of the audience. So the best out of the bunch. So we decided to try the Oloroso Sherry Peated, and then we had a break. We had a Fit the Man of Words bourbon to break the palate. Waited a little while, and then we had the Fino of this one.
Mm-hmm.
And I just went, I tell you what though, as nice as this one is, it's gonna hit you. Like, it's really, really punchy and really, really lovely and bubbly and fizzly and a lot of spice coming through. I just prefer the Oloroso Sherry in the peated.
Yeah.
And then we then went back to try the unpeated Fino, and I was like, it's just a bit more juicier.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the initial thoughts about doing this tasting, which, is quite acceptable, was that you try the peated against unpeated. But as discussed, once you try the peated whiskey, then you go back to the bourbon unpeated, you're losing the taste. But with hindsight, and if you could do this tasting again, it would be great. In fact, there's no reason why we can't, is to have an evening where you try number 1 against number 5. Then the following evening you try number 2 against number 6.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Your palate's fresh each day to compare peated to unpeated. That's something that we might actually do ourselves as a team, to compare peated and unpeated, the same sherry cask, but a different style, compared to doing 4, then 4, just to see if there's a difference when you're comparing them side by side.
Yeah, and I completely agree, because the downside of doing a sort of tasting like this, because you always want to compare the two sides of the same coin, and yes, you can have, you can go back to try and drum number 2 as opposed to drum number 5, is that your palate has significantly warmed up, and your faculties have significantly gone AWOL compared to drum number 1, compared to drum number 6.
Yeah.
So you might treat number 1 with a bit of hesitancy, a bit of pessimism, because, this is a brand I've never tried before, 60%, 7 years old. Let's see what it's about. It's very, very strong. I need to add a bit of water to that. By the time you get to drum number 5, it's sort of like, right, I understand the brand now. We've talked about it. I understand the ethos.
And I think your mouth's getting used to the cask strength hitting it at between 58 and 60%, which it is. So no, I think a tasting of doing one side by side each day, and just saying, well, how much does that now different from what we did at this tasting?
Yeah,
because I say your taste buds are all over the bit.
And hopefully, at one point during the future, and I'm sure this is what the distillery owner wants us to have, is rather than go, remember that Man of Sword bourbon? Yeah, that was great. We want people to say, do you remember that Man of Sword bourbon? Do you want that Man of Sword cask XXXX compared to cask number XXXX?
Yeah,
that's kind of where we want to move. I don't know if it'll ever happen, because there are, we can do up to probably about 1,500, probably 2,000 casks a year. So there is a long, especially if we decide to bottle that many in a year. We're probably at this point where we're doing about 6 bottles of each year, so 12 bottles a year. So there's no reason why it couldn't. Sky's the limit. But I think the distillery owners really wanted to push the onus of the cask number. So obviously this is cask number 342, 343 next year, 345 the next year after. Which one is better? But that obviously renders on the fact of them still being available. Otherwise, it just renders the whole thing mute.
That's right. I mean, is there no? You probably said it. You have said it before, but is there no thought in the future that to celebrate your 10th anniversary, you would release a 10-year-old?
Yes. Again, folks, I'm not telling him any of these questions. He's just that good, What we're doing is in November. This is a funny story as well. So we went into the warehouse and we have obviously. We started in 2014, but it was very late 2014.
It was near the back end, basically.
Yeah, November, December is when we started distilling. Yeah. So November was Man of Words, December was Man of Swords. 40 casks, 40 casks. So casks 1 to 39 were unpeated. Casks 40 to around about, I think if my math is correct, about 80, 79, something like that. I can't remember. I think it was cask 79. Something like that. So what we decided to do is obviously look through all of the Man of Words 1 to 39. Went into the warehouse, tried cask number 1. Okay, it's a refill bourbon. It is what it is. We'll leave that a bit longer. We're not going to bottle cask number 1. Fine. Selected cask number 9. Cask number 9 was a refill as well. Very good, but we really want to give something a little bit special, make a bit more of a splash. And it actually took us to get to cask 39, all the way to the end, where that was a fresh bourbon. And the problem that we had was that at cask 39, it was the end of the run. So we only really just over half filled it. So rather than 200 litres, we filled it with about 125, 130 litres of spirit, give or take. Okay. Which in hindsight was a bit bad, but it was fantastic. So we all unanimously agreed that we would bottle that cask at 50 centilitres, at 10 years. So that'll be November 11th or November 11th or November 12th, I think it is. Yeah. And then we went to cask 41 because cask 40 was obviously been bottled for Doddy Weir. Tried cask 41. Amazing. So we didn't need to go to cask 79 to know that cask, it was that good. So I believe cask 42 might be lined up for the 10-year for Man of Sword, 10 years. And then obviously 2025 is our first full year of production. So that is when we'll start to bring the price will go from the first bottling exclusives, limited numbers. Obviously, it'll still be limited numbers, but the grander wide audience will be able to have access to our 10-year-old stock, which is fantastic. And it's a huge milestone for us.
But there'll still be single casks, though.
There will still be single casks, yeah.
Yeah. We're going to do a marriage and just do a basic Annandale 10-year-old at 46%.
We had a meeting about this, and it was, do we stick or twist with the Man of Words, Man of Swords? And I said to the owner, I went, well, think of it this way. Rome wasn't built in a day. And also, to be more point, Optimal wasn't built in a day. Optimal was built by Bruichladdich, which is absolutely fine. But if you didn't know that, then Bruichladdich would still be where we are now. So there's some advantages to being Bruichladdich. And obviously Optimal. So I was like, if we just keep going with the Man of Words, Man of Swords, it will pan out for us. I have 100% faith that it will pan out with us. Whether we just do it single cask and we reduce the ABV, we're very adaptable that way. We can do a 50%. Do we want to do Man of Words, Man of Swords, where we just keep that as the cask strength only and do an Annandale 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 at a certain percentage, but still remain single cask? That is still on the cards. There's no reason as to why we couldn't be adaptive in that way. But you heard it here first. We are going to be bottling a 10-year-old in November. We are going to be bottling a 10-year-old in December. And then the sky's the limit for our 2015 stock, which is predominantly made up of bourbon and sherry. So yeah, I suppose I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, "Wow, you're really going to become part of the old boys." And I went, "At 10 years old."
Yeah, because I know that in Speyside, Annandale didn't release anything until it was its 10th anniversary. They just get
Yeah, no.
all the whiskey there. They needed a single sherry cask, a single bourbon cask, and a 2015 vintage release. But they bided their time for 10 years before, I think 10 years before they actually released anything. But just interesting because a lot of the customers come in to ask them, and oh, have you got something local? Yeah, I've got the Bloody Bland with Annandale. And how old is it? Well, depending on how old the cask is. What do you mean? Is it not 10, 15? Do you not have a 25? No, it's not that old. Some of them don't know the aspect of single cask whiskies as such. They're looking at age statements, 10 or a 12 or a 15, so they can compare it to a 12-year-old Glenfarclas or 12-year-old Tullibardine or a 12-year-old Glengoyne or whatever. But the aspect of single cask whiskies is quite difficult to explain to people who want to come in, visitors who want something local. They're going to spend a bit of time doing it, but they get the story after a while.
Yeah, it takes a while, and as you know, you've known me for roughly about 4 to 5 to 6 years. Forget when the first time we met. It was probably the first time at Drambus I actually fully met you, and even then I was naive, and I was like, well, everyone will know what single cask is, and it's just it is and it isn't known. And then once they do get it, they go, oh, okay. Wait, hold on, everything you do is single cask, yeah. So there's no consistent core bourbon, sherry, single malt. Like, no, that's just how we do. We do from production to obviously casking, maturation, bottling to your dram, and it's so linear. It's completely straight like that. But I suppose what I don't know if you found, and you probably have, especially with independent bottlers, that you want people that want somewhere that's completely different that they've never tried before. You want somewhere that the cask type is different and never tried before, and you obviously have a sort of duty to your customer base of giving them the good quality, so that where they're putting their money, that £75 to £130 mark, whatever it may be, is spent in the right way. So there is that as well. So hopefully we can be that sort of beacon where you want somewhere that's single malt, single cask strength, good quality, regardless of age statement. Yeah, under £100, that's the brand for you.
And then you've got the choice of unpeated or peated.
Exactly.
So split it in between two. So you've still got the customer profile, peated or unpeated.
Well, if we can keep going with the peat box, we will.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time. That was excellent. That's an in-depth story as well. It's like a masterclass, but online. Although it's a local distillery, because we're doing online tastings, obviously the kits are going on all over the world. Yeah. Abbey, Glasgow, Carlisle, everywhere. I mean, everywhere. It hits all 4 points of the compass and 30 miles of Dumfries anyway. So, thank you very much. But what it did, when COVID hit, it did increase our membership because people could only stay at home, and now even locally, we're still selling kits because I think people feel that okay, if there's 4 of them, we're selling. You might see that there's only 20 or 30 people looking, but that's one person might have 5 people at the table.
Yeah,
because they're coming to somebody's house to share the experience of a small group of people rather than just on their own as it was with COVID. Now the rules have changed, so we're finding that people are buying kits of 2, 3, 4, even 5 kits so that they can all experience it at somebody's house and discuss it and taste it. And then next week we've got the tasting, obviously live at the Railway Club in Dumfries as well, where you can interact with people and they can all sit with their friends and have a chit chat and ask questions, etc. So it's good that
the one thing I've experienced being whenever you put on the t-shirt for any brand, you're a brand ambassador, regardless if that's your title or not, is just because, like, I've been to tastings where, you know, I've been to Germany, I've been to Switzerland, I've been to Denmark, and all these different places, and they will tell you about your distillery. That's how invested they are. That's how
Yeah.
interested
Yeah.
they are. And you know, you can be walking down the high street in Dumfries or East Driggs or Garlashills. These are local areas to us, and they'll go, "Have you ever heard of Annandale?" I did a pop up shop in Langham where I live around the corner, and they never heard of us. And it's like, it just goes to show you that
Really?
there are that you know, people. If you just stop them, because
Mhm.
life is moving quite fast. If you just stop them and go, "Have you got 5 minutes to talk about Annandale Distillery?" And they'll go, "Never heard of it." Within 5 minutes, wow, where can I go experience such a vibrant,
You should get a
diverse?
sandwich board on your back and just go up and down the high street with the Annandale logo, man of word on the front, man of sword on the back, and some wee samples and just something.
I
I'll
tell
have a
you
word
what,
with David about this. I'll
yeah.
send him an email on Monday about this. I've got an idea for
Uh,
Ben when he's bored. Call him the
I tell you
sandwich man,
what,
sandwich board
you
man.
if we did that on the Royal Mile, do you know how many people would buy our whiskey?
Yeah,
At
yeah.
least 4. Maybe.
Very good.
If they
Anyway,
try it, they'll probably be a bit more.
thank you for your time,
No, it's my
and
absolute pleasure.
we'll see you next week. We'll get in touch with times, etc.
Yeah.
If you want to drop off any point of sale midweek or just bring it with you on the evening, that's fine because
Yeah.
we'll be there to help you with your pop-up stands and whatever. But we'll have everything pre-poured as we always do for tasting, so you don't have to turn up too early. We'll do all that.
Yeah.
So just a case of getting in touch with what time you're actually going to be in Dumfries. But we'll discuss that later on. So
Yeah, of
thank you very
course. Yeah.
much
My
for your
absolute
time.
pleasure,
It's
guys.
been very
And
educational. It's been good. It's been good fun. Hope everybody's enjoyed it. And we're just going to finish off as we do with a little raffle. So if Karen can come over and then she can get the blame for picking the tickets. And everybody can go boo, hiss to Karen rather than me for a change. So we have 4 prizes tonight. So if you're one of the lucky 4, well done, and thank you for participating in the raffle. So I'm just going to pen or pencil, a writing implement would do. As we keep an eye on our website for anything that might pop up unexpectedly, what we're doing. So, cool. Here we go. Shout it out nice and clear.
It's 434.
4, 3, 4. Okay. Right. Simi Moore will be happy. Well done, Simi. 5, 3, 7. Well done, Mr. Willie Green. Congrats. Bring it into the body of the cup. 4, 4, 8. 4, 4, 8. Oh, Brian Much. Don't know if that's Brian Much Junior or Senior, but you'll know yourself who it is. And the last one is 403, which is John Ferry. We recognise names when we come to kits because people have been supporting us for years. But actually, ironically, John and his wife were in the area last weekend, and instead of posting out his order, he came to collect it. So we actually met each other in person. Although he's seen me on the screen, I haven't didn't know his wife or himself, and it was nice to actually meet a customer who's been buying and supporting us over the years. to meet them in person and to pick up his order. And now that I see the name, I recognise the face. And thank you, John, for your support over the years now that I've met you. So thank you, everybody, for your support, for the tasting, for entering the raffle. There is a few things coming up, particularly, unfortunately, the one on the 27th of September, where we have to say goodbye to the Jaquir Arms. But we're going to say goodbye to the Jaquir Arms in style, and something that we've never done before. It could be, as I say, about £45 a head, but that does reflect the age and price of the whiskies, and a bit of banter and a bit of fun. And then there is a glass at the end of the evening to say cheers to the Queer Arms. So if anything else comes up, we'll let you know as soon as. So thank you, everybody, for participating, and I hope you have a nice weekend. We don't know what the weather's like. We are actually heading off to Campbelltown tomorrow for the weekend. So hopefully the weather will be fine for us getting there. So enjoy yourselves. Thanks for your support, and thanks again, Ben, for your time on a Friday night to tell us the history of Annandale and talk us through the whiskies. So good night on behalf of Karen and I and all the staff at TB Watson's. Thank you for your support, and hopefully see you again at some point. Thank you.